The great hall of Orion Prime was filled with voices that echoed through its endless chambers. Alien leaders and envoys from many worlds had gathered, their bodies glowing, shimmering, or towering in strange shapes. The Galactic Council was in session, a place where the fate of entire civilizations was debated. The subject of this gathering was Earth, a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy. Some saw it as weak, divided, and unworthy of independence. Others looked upon it with caution, knowing stories that whispered of something far more dangerous beneath its surface. At the center of the chamber stood Veyron, a delegate from a powerful star system. His body was tall and thin, with deep ridges across his head and glowing amber eyes. He had lived long enough to have seen battles few others dared remember. He had fought near Earth's outer systems and knew firsthand the fire that burned within humanity. He had listened to the younger voices in the council who spoke with arrogance about conquest, who believed Earth could be claimed in days. Now he raised his voice above the rest. "Invade Earth? Are you mad?" Veyron said, his voice firm but filled with something deeper. A warning. The hall quieted for a moment, though whispers still carried through the air. He looked around at the hundreds of alien eyes fixed upon him. Some glowed, some blinked in patterns, others simply stared. He could sense their doubt. Many of them had not seen humans. They had not felt the desperation and stubbornness that turned them into something unlike any other species. Veyron began to tell his story. Years ago, his fleet had crossed near human space. They had not meant to fight, only to test defenses, but humans were quick to react. They were young as a species, but their reaction was fierce and immediate. His fleet had thought it would be simple, overwhelming technology against unprepared defenders. Yet within days, humans adapted. They changed their weapons, altered their ships, and turned their desperation into strength. They fought in ways that ignored reason, in ways that defied logic. Veyron's voice grew lower as he spoke. They are fragile, yes. They bleed, they break, but they do not stop. That is their curse, and that is their power. In another part of the galaxy, far from Orion Prime, life on Earth continued as normal. The people of Earth went about their days, unaware that their destiny was being debated. In a military installation tucked away in the forests of Colorado, young officers trained under the watch of their commanders. Daniel Carter, tall and broad-shouldered, had spent his early years working hard just to enter the academy. He believed in service even though the world outside often felt divided and troubled. Alongside him was Sophia Lee, sharp-minded and calm under pressure, who had grown up in the city and had always dreamed of something greater than the narrow streets of her childhood. Matthew Brooks, their friend, was quick with jokes but fearless in training, often lifting spirits during long nights of drills. To them, it was another day of preparation. They trained with flight simulators, studied patterns of surveillance, and tested defense systems that guarded their planet. None of them knew that far away. Alien leaders debated whether to crush their world or leave it alone. They laughed together between drills, shared meals, and argued over who would outperform the other in the next test. Their lives were ordinary, yet their names were about to be tied to events greater than they could imagine. Back in the council chamber, the debate grew heated. A towering figure with skin like polished stone boomed across the floor, calling humans reckless and violent. They cannot be trusted to grow. They war with themselves even now. They poison their planet. They destroy and kill without thought. If they are not stopped now, they will one day become a danger to us all. Others nodded in agreement. The proposal to invade Earth had gained traction among powerful factions. They looked at humans as if they were animals that had been given tools of destruction too early. But Veyron shook his head. His voice, though quieter than the booming, stone-skinned delegate, carried far more weight. You think you will control them. You think their division makes them weak, but have you not seen what happens when they unite? When their backs are against the wall, do not mistake their chaos for weakness. It is their greatest strength. He recalled a battle where human ships, patched with metal and filled with soldiers who had little to lose, fought until the very last one was destroyed. Not a single human surrendered. Even when their ships were burning, even when escape was possible, they stayed to fight. He had watched with awe and fear as they rammed their own ships into larger cruisers, turning themselves into weapons. To most species, survival was the goal. To humans, victory was often worth more than life itself. The chamber stirred with unease. Some of the delegates leaned forward, curious now. Others scoffed and whispered that Veyron exaggerated. But his words planted a seed of doubt in their minds. Across the galaxy, stories of humans had already begun to spread. how they could survive in places others could not, how they could turn famine into feasts, and how they could create tools and weapons from scraps. On Earth, Daniel, Sophia, and Matthew sat together under the night sky outside their base. The stars above stretched forever, a reminder that humanity's place in the galaxy was small and fragile. Daniel pointed out constellations he had memorized as a boy, speaking of how his father once told him that there were other worlds out there. Sophia listened quietly, her eyes fixed on the horizon, wondering what might lie beyond. Matthew, always restless, tossed pebbles at a nearby post, joking about aliens watching them from above. They laughed, unaware of how close his joke was to truth. The first hints of something strange came that night in the base's control room. Radar stations picked up unusual signals in orbit. At first, the readings seemed like errors, anomalies caused by equipment. But when they appeared again and again, the technicians grew uneasy. Daniel and Sophia were assigned to review the data. They noticed that the patterns were too steady to be accidents. Something or someone was watching them. Back in Orion Prime, the Council continued its argument late into the night. The chamber buzzed with tension, the fate of Earth hanging on every word. Varen stood tall, his amber eyes burning. "You may believe humans can be bent, controlled, or broken," he said, "but you are wrong. To invade them is to awaken them. And when humans are awakened, no empire in this chamber will ever rest again." Silence followed. The delegates did not admit it aloud, but deep within, they felt the weight of his warning. They knew their choice would shape the future of the galaxy. For Varen, it was not just politics. It was survival, for them and perhaps even for the humans themselves. The Great Hall of Orion Prime remained restless after Varen's warning. But the debate could not end with just one voice. Many delegates believed he was exaggerating. They demanded proof, something more than stories of battles long past. Varen knew this moment would come. He raised his voice once more and began recounting the first real clash between his fleet and humanity. His words painted pictures that were difficult for the Council to ignore. He told them of his fleet's arrival near a small human colony. The world was modest, only half terraformed, and still fragile under its thin atmosphere. His ships outnumbered the human defenders 10-1. Their shields were stronger, their weapons more advanced, and their confidence unshakable. But humans, as he explained, did not fight as most species did. Instead of fleeing or begging for mercy, they prepared to resist with every ounce of strength. Varen remembered the name of the captain who commanded the defense, Laura Bennett. She was not extraordinary by galactic standards, young, determined, and human. But her leadership turned a hopeless situation into something unforgettable. Laura ordered her people to fight with everything they had. They had old ships, patched hulls, and weapons that often failed. But they adapted quickly. They stripped civilian transports and turned them into weapons. They rerouted power through systems never meant for combat. They created traps in orbit, using asteroids as shields and even ramming debris into enemy ships. Varen described how their tactics seemed wild and reckless, but they worked. His fleet lost more ships than they ever expected. Even when the colony fell, humans did not surrender. They retreated only to fight again another day. The Council listened with mixed emotions. Some were impressed, some disturbed, and some still mocked Varen's words. But his story did not end there. He told them about Sergeant Alex Monroe, a soldier who fought on the ground during that same campaign. Outnumbered and cut off, Alex led a group of defenders who held a single outpost against Varen's best troops for days. With broken weapons, dwindling supplies, and no hope of survival, they still fought. Varen admitted with shame that he had expected them to break, but they never did. Instead, they forced his soldiers to retreat more than once, something no one had thought possible. Alex and his men all perished, but they delayed the advance long enough for civilians to escape. The chamber grew quiet as Varen spoke. His words carried weight because he had seen it with his own eyes. He described how humans were unpredictable. They could be reckless, emotional, and even foolish, but those same traits made them dangerous in ways other species could not understand. They turned weakness into strength, and they never accepted defeat. While the Galactic Council argued over his words, life on Earth moved steadily forward. Daniel Carter and Sophia Lee were working late in the control center, analyzing the strange signals their team had detected. They leaned over glowing screens filled with numbers and shifting graphs, trying to make sense of it. The data did not match any known satellite or space debris. It moved with purpose, adjusting positions with precision. It looked like something or someone was watching Earth. Matthew Brooks entered the room with a grin, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You two need to rest. You're staring at those screens like they'll bite." But when he saw the seriousness on their faces, his smile faded. Together, the 3 friends studied the patterns. The realization slowly grew inside them that these signals might not be natural. They had always joked about aliens, but now the thought carried weight. Daniel felt a chill as he spoke. What if someone is actually out there? Sophia nodded quietly. She was calm, but inside her thoughts raced. She had always believed humanity was not alone. Now she feared her belief might become reality in a way they were not ready for. The next morning, their commander summoned them to a private meeting. General Sarah Whitman stood at the front of the room, her presence commanding respect. She was a woman of experience, known for her sharp judgment and steady leadership. She looked at the young officers with piercing eyes. "You've found something unusual. I need you to dig deeper. Do not share this outside this room." Her tone left no space for questions. The weight of responsibility settled on their shoulders. They understood now that they were not just training anymore. They were guarding the first line of Earth's defense against something far greater than themselves. Meanwhile, back at Orion Prime, the Council split into factions. One side grew louder, demanding Earth be conquered quickly. They argued that if humans were truly as dangerous as Veyron described, then leaving them unchecked was a mistake. "We cannot allow them to spread," one delegate shouted, their voice sharp and cold. "They are like fire. Leave them alone and they will burn through the galaxy." The other side hesitated. They were not convinced of humanity's power, but they were unsettled by Veyron's warning. His words painted a picture of a species that could not be controlled once provoked. He spoke of their history, how even on their own world they had survived disasters, plagues, and wars that would have ended other civilizations. He spoke of their creativity, their ability to make weapons out of scraps and strategies out of desperation. And he reminded the Council that unlike many other species, humans did not fear sacrifice. To them, death was not the end if victory was gained. As the debate raged, Daniel, Sophia, and Matthew continued their secret work on Earth. They traced the signals further, discovering faint transmissions hidden within them. The codes were complex, unlike anything they had ever seen. Daniel leaned forward, frustration clear in his voice. "It's not just surveillance. It's communication. Whoever's out there, they're talking to each other." Sophia's mind raced as she tried to decode the signals. Matthew, restless as always, muttered, "So what do we do if they're already here?" That night, as the 3 sat together, the base around them felt different. The air was heavy with tension, though no one else seemed to notice. They felt as if the stars themselves were watching. Sophia finally broke the silence, her voice steady but low. "If we are being watched, then Earth needs to be ready. And if no one believes us, then it's on us to make sure we are." Daniel and Matthew nodded. Their ordinary lives had suddenly become extraordinary. They did not yet realize that their actions would soon place them at the center of history. Back in the Galactic Council, Veyron made his final words for the day. "You believe humanity is weak because they fight among themselves. But I tell you this, the moment an outsider threatens them, they will stand as one. And when they do, they will not stop until their enemy is broken." His voice echoed across the chamber, and for the first time, many of the delegates remained silent. They were not convinced, but they were not laughing anymore. A seed of doubt had been planted, and it began to grow. In the stillness of that moment, across the vastness of space, Earth's young defenders looked to the sky. They did not know the Council existed, nor that their planet's fate was being debated, but they felt something was coming, something larger than themselves. And in their hearts, they were ready to face it. The Council chamber on Orion Prime grew more divided as the days passed. The debate over Earth had split the delegates into 2 powerful sides. One side demanded immediate conquest, seeing Earth as a small world that could be crushed before it became a greater threat. The other side, stirred by Veyron's warnings, urged caution. The fate of humanity now hung between their voices, though Earth itself remained unaware of the galactic stage where its name was spoken. Veyron stood once again, his amber eyes glowing faintly in the chamber's light. He spoke of history, of how humans thrived on a planet filled with danger. "Their world itself shapes them," he said. "Poisonous plants, beasts that hunt them, storms that level cities, quakes that shatter the ground, floods that swallow whole towns. Any one of these would have destroyed lesser races. Yet the humans endure. Their own world has made them harder than steel. The chamber stirred with murmurs. A delegate with silver skin and sharp features raised her voice. They may endure their planet, but they cannot stand against the might of the galaxy. If they resist, we will simply crush them with fleets and armies. Varen shook his head slowly. You believe your fleets will frighten them? No. They will welcome the challenge. They will turn every weapon you use against them into a lesson. They will learn faster than you think possible. His words were heavy, and though many still doubted, more than a few began to wonder if he spoke the truth. Meanwhile, on Earth, the signals Daniel Carter, Sophia Lee, and Matthew Brooks had discovered grew more frequent. In the control center of their base, glowing screens showed strange paths moving across Earth's orbit. The three of them worked day and night, their friendship the only comfort against the pressure of their task. Daniel's shoulders grew tense as he leaned over the data. These are not just scouts, he whispered. This looks like planning. They're testing our defenses. Sophia's voice was calm but steady. If that's true, then Earth doesn't have much time. She began drafting a report for General Whitman, outlining every detail. Her fingers typed quickly, but her thoughts were heavy. She knew that if this information was true, it meant humanity was not only being watched, it was being judged. Matthew tried to lighten the mood, tossing a pen onto the table and leaning back in his chair. If they're out there, they've picked the wrong planet to mess with. His grin was quick, but his eyes betrayed worry. He was brave, but he understood the weight of what they were facing. They were only a handful of young officers, yet now they were at the center of something far larger than themselves. General Sarah Whitman read their report in silence. Her eyes moved over the words, and though her face remained calm, her heart grew heavier with each line. She had seen enough battles on Earth to know the danger of underestimating an enemy. If Varen could have seen her in that moment, he would have known he was not alone in his fears. She dismissed the young officers with a short nod. Good work. Stay quiet about this. We will act soon. Back in Orion Prime, the voices of the council grew louder. Delegates shouted over one another, their words sharp and filled with anger. A hulking warrior race demanded war, claiming that Earth would one day become uncontrollable if not subdued now. Another race, small and frail in body but powerful in thought, asked whether war was worth the risk if Vayron's warnings proved true. The chamber was filled with chaos, yet in the middle of it all, Vayron stood calm, his voice cutting through the noise. You call them reckless and violent. You call them destructive. Yes, they are. But that is what makes them different. They do not know how to quit. They will burn themselves if it means their enemy burns too. They will destroy everything rather than bow. And if you make them your enemy, you will learn this the hard way. The chamber fell silent for a moment, his words heavy in the air. Then arguments resumed, fiercer than before. On Earth, Daniel and Sophia were summoned once more by General Whitman. She showed them a transmission intercepted by Earth's hidden satellites. The message was faint but clear. It did not come from Earth. It came from deep space, a signal meant for someone watching in orbit. Daniel felt his heart race as he read the decoded fragment. Observation continues. Awaiting council decision. Sophia looked at the general, her face pale but steady. That means they're waiting to know if we live or die. The room was quiet as the weight of her words settled on them. General Whitman did not waste time. If they are waiting, then so are we. We must be ready for the worst. I am placing you three on special duty. You will track every signal, every movement. If anything changes, you report directly to me. Daniel, Sophia, and Matthew exchanged glances. They had started as ordinary officers, but now they were guardians of knowledge that could change the fate of their planet. They nodded, accepting their orders without hesitation. Meanwhile, the Council and Orion Prime reached a breaking point. The two factions prepared for a vote, one to invade Earth and the other to delay. The chamber buzzed with energy as delegates argued, bargained, and threatened. Vayron stood in the shadows, his thoughts heavy. He knew his words might not be enough. He had seen humans fight. He had watched them turn hopeless battles into victories, and he feared that if the Council chose invasion, the galaxy would pay the price. In his mind, he remembered Captain Laura Bennett, who had led her people until her ship was torn apart. He remembered Sergeant Alex Monroe, who had fought until the last breath. He remembered the fire in their eyes, the determination in their voices. And he remembered the fear in his own heart when he realized he was not facing a fragile species at all, but a force that could not be broken. That night on Earth, Daniel, Sophia, and Matthew gathered outside once again. The stars above glittered, silent and endless. They looked up, wondering which of those lights hid the ones watching them. Matthew broke the silence first. "Do you think they'll come?" Sophia answered quietly. "Yes, sooner or later they will." Daniel clenched his fists, his gaze fixed on the sky. "Then we'll be ready." His voice was steady, though inside he felt the weight of fear and determination. They were young, but in their hearts they carried the spirit of their people, the same spirit Veyron had seen on the battlefield years ago. And as the council prepared to cast its vote, the fate of Earth trembled in the balance, watched by eyes both human and alien. No one could know what choice would be made, but one thing was certain. Humanity would not go quietly into the darkness. If threatened, they would rise, and the galaxy itself would feel the fire of their defiance. The Galactic Council chamber reached a level of tension that few had ever witnessed. Delegates argued until their voices grew hoarse. The question of Earth was no longer just about a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy. It was about fear, pride, and the balance of power. Some races saw Earth as a threat that must be destroyed before it grew too strong. Others saw it as an unpredictable danger best left untouched. And a few, though still quiet, began to wonder if humanity might one day become an ally instead of an enemy. Veyron stood again. His presence drew silence, for even those who mocked him before now listened. He spoke slowly, carefully, as though every word carried the weight of history. "You have seen their wars. You know their history. They are not like us. They do not bend when broken. They do not yield when cornered. They create weapons from desperation, and they fight with a fury that has no equal. If you invade them, you will not conquer. You will awaken." Some scoffed, but others shifted uneasily. The thought of awakening something unstoppable was not easy to dismiss. Still, the warlike factions pushed harder, demanding that Earth be struck quickly. They promised swift victory and easy spoils. They painted humans as savages unworthy of their place among the stars. Yet doubt lingered in the chamber, seeded by Veyron's words. On Earth, far from the Council's grand debates, General Sarah Whitman moved quietly through her base. She had authorized a secret mission after reviewing the signals her young officers had uncovered. Daniel Carter and Sophia Lee prepared in silence as they strapped into a small shuttle. Their task was dangerous but simple. They were to locate and disable an unidentified probe that had been orbiting Earth. If they succeeded, they would confirm beyond question that someone out there was watching. If they failed, Earth might never know the truth until it was too late. Matthew Brooks stood with them before launch, his usual grin replaced with unease. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. Daniel gave him a nod. "If we don't, who will?" Sophia's calm voice followed. "This isn't just about us. This is about everyone." Their words hung heavy, but there was no turning back. The shuttle roared to life, leaving the safety of Earth behind. The mission was quiet at first. Stars glittered around them as the shuttle drifted through the void. Daniel's hands gripped the controls while Sophia monitored the sensors. Slowly the object came into view. A dark, angular probe, its surface covered in strange symbols and faint lights. It moved with precision, turning slowly as if searching the skies. Sophia whispered, "That's no satellite." Daniel guided the shuttle closer, his heart pounding. They had prepared an electromagnetic pulse device, built hastily from Earth's limited technology. If it worked, the probe would be disabled. If it failed, they might not return home. As the shuttle approached, the probe reacted, releasing a faint signal into the void. Sophia's eyes widened as she read the data. "It's sending a warning." Without hesitation, Daniel activated the device. A pulse of energy rippled through space, striking the probe. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lights on the probe flickered and its movements grew sluggish. It drifted aimlessly, disabled. Relief washed over them, but it was short-lived. Sophia's console lit up with alerts. Multiple signals, others are nearby. They had been noticed. Back on Earth, General Whitman received the transmission. The mission had succeeded, but the message was clear. Humanity was not alone. She ordered immediate preparation for defense. Earth was not yet ready for war, but it would not remain unprepared any longer. In Orion Prime, Veyron stood tall once again. As if fate had chosen its moment, news arrived in the chamber through hidden channels. Reports spread among the delegates that Earth's defenders had just disabled an advanced probe. Whispers filled the hall. If it was true, then humanity had just proved Veyron's warnings correct. They could adapt. They could fight back, and they could win. The warlike delegates grew furious, shouting that this was proof Earth was dangerous and must be destroyed now. But others hesitated. The idea of a species capable of resisting with such limited tools made them uneasy. If humans could defeat surveillance probes with primitive means, what would they do with time and growth? Doubt spread further, and Veyron pressed his advantage. You see, even now they resist. Even with tools less advanced than yours, they fight as if the stars themselves belong to them. Do you still think they will fall easily? Do you still believe they can be broken? To fight them is to fight forever. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Delegates looked at one another, their pride battling their fear. Some remained convinced of easy victory, but many were no longer sure. The vote to invade Earth was not yet taken, but the balance had shifted. Meanwhile, Daniel and Sophia's shuttle raced back to Earth, alarms ringing as faint signals chased them. Daniel pushed the engines to their limits, his hands tight on the controls. Sophia monitored the readings, her calm voice guiding him. Hold steady. Almost there. Behind them, the signals faded, but the warning was clear. Whoever had placed those probes would not ignore their loss. When they landed, Matthew was waiting, relief clear on his face. You did it, he said, gripping their shoulders. Daniel shook his head. We just made the galaxy notice us. Sophia added quietly, now we have to be ready. The night sky over Earth was clear, but to those who knew the truth, it no longer felt the same. The stars no longer represented only wonder. They represented watchers, threats, and decisions being made far away that could decide Earth's fate. General Whitman looked up at those same stars, her voice low as she whispered to herself, if they come, we will not fall quietly. On Orion Prime, the chamber prepared for its vote. Voices were hushed, yet the air was charged with energy. Veyron's warning echoed in the minds of many. The future of Earth and perhaps the galaxy itself would be shaped by what happened next. The chamber of the Galactic Council was silent when the moment of decision arrived. Delegates who once shouted now sat in uneasy quiet, each aware that the choice they made could change the balance of the galaxy. At the heart of the debate stood Veyron, his amber eyes steady as he watched the factions prepare for the vote. For days he had spoken against the invasion, warning that Earth was not what it seemed. Now everything rested on whether the others would listen. The warlike delegates spoke first. Their voices thundered across the chamber as they demanded the destruction of Earth. They have already attacked our probes, one declared, his armored body glowing faintly under the chamber lights. They will never submit. If we do not destroy them now, they will become a force too great to control. Others shouted in agreement, promising quick victory, riches, and the removal of a dangerous rival before it could grow stronger. But Veyron raised his hand, his voice calm but filled with unshakable certainty. You think you will destroy them? You will only create your own doom. Look at what they have done already. With technology far weaker than yours, they disabled advanced probes. With no knowledge of us, they prepare to fight. They are not afraid. They are awake. His words struck deeply. Many delegates shifted in their seats, remembering the reports that had reached them. Some avoided his gaze, unwilling to admit their fear aloud. He continued, his voice steady and relentless. They are not like other species. They do not surrender when beaten. They do not yield when outnumbered. They grow stronger when tested. They are fire. You can try to smother it, but it will only spread. If you invade Earth, you will not conquer. You will ignite a war that will never end. The chamber was silent again. The delegates looked at one another, torn between pride and fear. Finally, the vote was cast. The decision came down to a narrow margin, but in the end, the invasion was rejected. Instead of war, the Council agreed to limited observation and cautious contact. Earth would not be destroyed, at least not now. The warlike factions grumbled with anger, but the seed of caution had taken root. On Earth, Daniel Carter, Sophia Lee, and Matthew Brooks were summoned to General Sarah Whitman's office. She looked at them with pride hidden beneath her stern expression. You have done well, she told them. The world may never know the part you played, but because of you, we are more prepared than ever. The three friends felt the weight of her words. They had begun as young officers, but now they were part of something far greater, the defense of their entire world. That night they stood together outside the base, gazing at the stars. The sky stretched endlessly, filled with countless points of light. But to them it no longer looked the same. Daniel spoke first, his voice quiet but firm. Somewhere out there they were talking about us, deciding if we should live or die. Sophia nodded. And we proved we're not as weak as they thought. Matthew grinned faintly, though his eyes were serious. If they ever come, they'll regret it. Back in the council chamber, Varen left the hall, his thoughts heavy but resolute. He had done all he could to protect both his people and humanity. He knew the council's decision was not the end. The warlike factions would not stay silent forever. But for now, Earth had been spared. As he walked through the great corridors of Orion Prime, his words echoed in his mind. Words he had spoken with all the strength of his voice. Invade Earth? Are you mad? They will not forgive, and they will never stop. Across the galaxy, those words began to spread. Whispers reached distant systems, and the legend of humanity grew. They were no longer seen as a small, fragile species. They were seen as a force to be respected, a storm waiting to rise. Stories of their stubbornness, their courage, and their defiance passed from world to world. Some feared them, some admired them, but none could ignore them. On Earth, Daniel, Sophia, and Matthew returned to their duties, but life would never be ordinary again. Every signal, every shadow in the sky carried new meaning. They trained harder, worked longer, and stood ready for whatever came next. They knew the galaxy had noticed them, and they knew that one day the decision to fight or not would no longer belong to distant delegates. It would belong to humanity itself. General Whitman watched them from a distance, her heart heavy but proud. She knew the future was uncertain, but she also knew that her people carried something no other species could match. They carried the will to survive, the will to resist, and the will to fight when cornered. And she knew that if the galaxy ever came for Earth, humanity would not bow. They would rise. The story of Earth's first brush with the galaxy closed not with war but with warning. Yet everyone who touched that story, Varen, the delegates, the young officers, the general, understood one truth. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage, and nothing would ever be the same again.